Sa paanong paraan kaya natin nasusolusyonan yung mga problema natin. So, we will need to find out scientific method. Okay, so ano yung ibig sabihin ng scientific method? Scientific method is an empirical method of acquiring knowledge that has characterized the development of science, no? So, malalaman natin yung iba't ibang mga methods or yung mga steps, no, ng scientific method. So, ito na sila. Actually, may mga iba't iba kasing mga references na lumalabas na sobrang daming steps. May iba umabot ng 6, 7, or 8, minsan nga 9, 10. So, pero this time, no, since meron tayong 5 basic steps na scientific method. Una is make an observation, state the problem, formulate hypothesis, perform an experiment, and then draw a conclusion. So, una, making an observation, no? We can observe the use of our 5 senses. Meron tayong 2 types ng observation. So, qualitative observation, it involves description, no? Description lang siya from the word itself, qualitative observation, such as the color of the dress, texture, size, and others. For example, hot, red, and then large. They are the example of qualitative observation. And what about quantitative observation? It involves the measurements such as water boiling at 100 degrees Celsius, rock weighing 3 kilograms, etc. So, meron ng numbers. Now, kapag sinabi natin qualitative, about words, about description, and then quantitative, it involves numbers and then measurement, no? So, yun lang naman yung dalawang types ng observation. And the next, in stating the problem, they are the common questions asked. Here are the WH question. Isa dito yung what happened, when did it happen, how did it happen, and then why did it happen. Example of this, actually itong example, una kong example is all about the objective na to na mismong problem, no? Objective of the certain study. For example, comparing the metal elements in leaves of different mango varieties, no? So, pag kumparahin niya na, no? Kung napapansin natin dito, pasok pa rin naman siya sa statement of the problem. But, dinarite niya in-objectify niya na hindi na gumamit ng WH question, which is pwede rin naman. But, as of now, we must need to apply WH question for the first timer na unang beses pa lang gagamit ng scientific method. So, meron tayong tatlong problem example, which is unang example are the metal elements sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium found in mango leaves. Pangalawa, are the metal elements present in the leaves of one variety of mangoes the same as those in other varieties? And then last one, is there any differences in the kind of metal elements found in young and adult leaves of the same variety of mango? So, ayan. So, etong example na to, pwede siyang mag-lead sa tinatawag na, or pwede natin itong gamitin, no, sa tinatawag natin na science investigatory project, no? Kadalasan ito yung ginagamit, no? Kumbaga, statement of the problem, ika nga itong nakikita natin. So, next, formulate hypothesis. Now, it is a merely educated or intelligent guess, no? So, kung nakikita natin, no, merely educated and intelligent guess, ito yung tinatawag natin na prediction, no, sa bagay na kung ano man yung naiisip natin, no, kung ano yung mga posibleng solution at explanation dun sa mismong observation natin or yung possible na solution, ika nga. Kadalasan ginagamit natin yung if and then statement. For example, if Carlo is using the cellphone during class discussion, then the teacher would be confiscated according to the classroom or teacher's restriction. Gumamit tayo ng di ba? Medyo redundant lang din, but we must use classroom's restriction, ika nga. Yan. And then next, yan, nakikita natin yung example based dun sa nauna nating example sa statement of the problem. Magnesium, calcium, sodium, and potassium are found in mango leaves. Next, the metal elements present in the leaves of one variety of mangoes are the same as those in other varieties. No? And then lastly, there is no difference in the kind of metal elements found in young and adult leaves of the same mango variety. And then fourth step is the performing an experiment, no? Experiment is an activity done to test the hypothesis. This is the step where you gather and record data. It will ensure whether the hypothesis is supported by the new information learned from the experiment or not. Kung dito ba sa performing, kung dito sa mismong performing an experiment is magiging, or obviously ba natatama ba yun sa hypothesis natin, or kung hindi, i-revise natin yung hypothesis natin. Kailangan yun, ganun talaga ang buhay. Kadalasan nare-reject din yung hypothesis. Kapag kapag na-perform natin na maayos yung experiment and then hindi nag-work, kailangan mo talagang umulit. Ganun talaga ang buhay. It will prove whether, katulad sinabi ko dito, no, it will prove whether a hypothesis is valid. Experiments are performed. Use replicates if needed, no? Kung sabihin man natin, no, yung mga replicates na yan, ito yung mga pang-backup na ano natin, backup natin sa mismong mga data natin. Paano ko sinabing backup? Kailangan natin magkaroon ng maraming mga samples. What if sabihin natin na nagtanim tayo ng mga plants, no? And para sa ating experiment. What if na kinagabihan merong mandemonyo ng study natin, no? Mali natin may mga nangalikot ng experiment natin, or mga nasabotahe, or yung sa hindi natin nanasahan, baka due to weather phenomena, baka kung ano na nangyari dun sa mismong halaman natin. Kailangan pa rin natin ng replicates. Kailangan talaga yan, no? Hindi yung kapag meron lang tayong isang replicate lang, o isang sample lang, and then yun pa yung nadali, and then hindi natin yun pwedeng i-reason out na ma'am or sir, mayroon pong ng demonyo sa study namin. So mahirap yun i-defend, no, once na nag-perform ka ng experiment, no. And then through performing an experiment, we need to analyze and record your data in the table. Make a graph for the data to look for trends and relationship with each other. Meron tayong iba't ibang uri ng relationship when it comes sa graph, no? Next, state a conclusion. If the hypothesis is proved through the means of experiment, you will now write a summary about your observation. Afterwards, you need to communicate others to tell your results and findings to your conducted study. Wag mong sasarilihin yung study mo na ikaw lang yung nakatuklas nito. What if na kung gamot yan, no? What if kung yan pala yung alternative medicine para masolusyonan yung kinakarap natin pandemic na yon? So, wag mo sasarilihin, wag ka madamot, wag ka madaya. Yan nga ang purpose ng science, eh. Maging innovative ka. Magkaroon ka rin ng credentials hanggang sa dulo, no? Once na kapag ikaw yung na-recognize dyan, kailangan mong i-spread, no, or i-communicate sa iba kung ano yung mga naging findings mo, kung naging tama ba or mali. The next is, one of the example here is, in a developing countries, the rate of tuberculosis infection is soaring. Crowded conditions, poor sanitation, and lack of access to medical care are all compounding factors in the spread of disease. Medyo iba lang to, no? But ito lang yung statement ng conclusion na nakita ko na medyo mauunawaan natin, no? Crowded conditions, poor sanitation, and lack of access to medical care, yan yung mga factors, no, na napatunayan dun sa study niya na kung bakit kumakalat yung tuberculosis infection sa mga developing countries. Ayan, meron tayong mismong background ng step ng scientific method, no. Nakita naman natin, no. But scientists can adjust their methods of inquiry in the middle of an investigation and still obtain a valid results. Yan. And then usually meron tayong meme, no, na nakikita natin. Ayan, para mas lalo natin naintindihan, no. So this time, no, we must need to differentiate between the theory and then the law. So, unahin muna natin yung scientific theory. So, ano yung scientific theory? They are the reason, the explanation tested by many observations and experiment. Usually, it tells why things are happened. Yan. And then, we must need to consider these three things, no? First of all, must explain clearly and simply. Next, must be repeatable, and then must be able to make predictions. In theories, they can be changed or modified by the new evidences. Ayan. Maaari pang mabago yan, no? And then, in law, they describe what happens. Then, they usually use a quantitative, which they can use numbers and equations to describe it, no? And then, for example, gagamit tayo ng tinatawag natin na Newton's law of motion. I-consider natin yung tatlong laws na yun, which is law of inertia, law of acceleration, and then law of interaction. So usually, second law of motion ang kino-consider natin na merong equation which signifies F is equals to ma, or force is equals to mass multiplied by acceleration, no? Then often equations are part of the law, and then usually mathematics is a universal language of science. Ayan yun. So nakita natin yung differences. In law, they describes how. Then it summarizes observations and usually an equation. While in theory, it explains why it is happened. And then agrees with observation and predicts new discoveries. Ayan. So, kung meron ka pa mga questions, comment ka lang sa baba, no? And then, goodbye. See you next time.